the scariest thing I've ever done in my life was like waiting to see the results on that stick. It was just the idea of hope being evaporated. What pulled me out of it was that it worked.
What did you feel when you picked up the test? Like, how long did it take you to walk back over and pick up the test?
Yeah, how many did you take?
Like 3 hours. No, I only had one. Like 3 hours. No, it wasn't 3 hours. It felt like it.
Hello, everybody.
What's going on?
Not a lot here, except there's gunk in my nose and throat and chest, and
Yeah, your whole house got hit with the cold.
except my husband. Like literally, me and Jack are like these booger messes, and
Yeah, but
he's
didn't
like
he have
immune.
some like stomach virus?
Yeah, he had no. It was like he has this like gastro thing. So,
Which also sounds special.
but you can't catch that, so that's good. But my waistline is not benefiting from this because all I want when I'm sick is white bread, like
So-
literally chemical bread.
Speaking of waistline, I have been on this health plan. I'm gonna
Yeah,
call
bro,
it, 'cause
I'm so ready for this. For me,
I don't like the word diet. I'm working with a registered dietitian on this health plan, and the goal of it is to decrease bloat and increase energy. Two things.
inflammation is the
Serious.
root cause of
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
And I think that we're seeing that more and more. And yes, so like you having inflammation now in your 30s can lead to something catastrophic in your 50s, or sooner. So this is important for you to do this. But what's interesting, and I want you to tell everybody about this, there has to be such a science to blood type for diet.
It's interesting. I don't know if it's that. I think it's more just that there's like certain things in your body. Like it's really hard to just do like a blanket statement for what's going to work for you to lose
Everyone
weight or
do
lose
the Atkins diet.
inflammation.
Everybody do
Right.
keto. Like it doesn't,
Right.
that's, yeah.
Yeah. So what I like
And it's not sustainable.
this woman that I'm working with is she asked you to send over a blood panel, and I had a recent one from work with that I was doing with a doctor over the summer, and she evaluated it individually for
And so
all
what
of
did
her
she
patients.
find? Like what was she like, okay, this and this and this need
She
fixing?
just saw some areas like magnesium I could use a little bit of, and that is like for
That's so buzzworthy everywhere. Everyone's talking about magnesium. Everyone's talking about gluten-free, which you're doing.
Yes, so gluten-free, dairy-free, and I'm like miserable about the fact that I feel great.
That's one of my
Because I'm
questions. Like, are you
don't
hungry?
I'm hungry, not like only probably because I'm waiting a little bit longer to eat. Like it's on me to stick to the times, and that's actually why I've only done anything like this twice in my life, and it's once after I had Sienna and now after I had Asher. I'm like really trying to get serious.
Yeah, and
about
you know
it.
what the worst part about both of those times is, because you sent me your diet plan you did after Sienna, is the no dairy.
Yeah. But so this one is only for like the first 3 to 4 weeks.
So it's
gonna
elimination.
Yeah, and it went right. So and it's
Yeah.
like you log every day how you feel, like what your energy level is, like how you feel after meals.
The hardest thing is eating out. The hardest thing is when you go to restaurants and you don't know how it's prepared, and you're like that idiot that you're like, well, do you cook it in olive oil?
But see, the way I look at it is like, yeah, I want to be serious about this for 8 weeks, but I also want to I want to find something that's sustainable for me to live. Like I don't want to crash.
You
diet.
just moved to Florida and you have all these friends in this awesome circle,
Yeah.
and like, we're gonna have cocktails.
Right,
We're
but
gonna
make
have
smarter
ice cream.
choices.
Yeah.
Like tonight, I'm going out to a Mexican restaurant, and while I would probably order the seafood enchiladas that are covered in cream and covered in cheese and covered in like all the delicious stuff, and then feel awful after and be like, I don't know why I feel this way. Like I will probably get chicken, like some type of shredded chicken with vegetables that's not covered in a sauce, and just add some avocado to it. She's yawning. She's over it. She hates it. But there really is a difference in how I feel after it.
Did you see, speaking of all of these tests done and how Chick-fil-A chicken is coming back for
I don't wanna hear it.
contraceptives?
I don't want to hear it.
Well, and it makes sense, and you don't think about this. So they have to give the chickens contraceptives. They don't want them like laying eggs, because they're meat chickens. Like they don't want the eggs. You're not the egg chicken. You were not chosen for that. So that is in the meat, and they're finding it.
Oh boy.
I know. Do you eat
Oh,
Chick-fil-A a
boy.
lot?
We are Chick-fil-A lovers.
But Chick-fil-A, I feel like the general rule is like In-N-Out, Chick-fil-A, Five Guys are safe. Like they have values. And they stand for something. And
I don't know, but
Chick-fil-A has fresh flowers on the table.
But that's actually why a lot of people don't like Chick-fil-A and some of those places, because their values aren't also aligned with the
Okay, well, they still have birth control in their chicken. So you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
come on, man. Like, come on. Let's.
Yeah.
No,
They,
yeah, it's just not. It's.
I mean, it's an incredible business. I mean, Mark
Yes.
read the book about the CEO, was actually hoping to learn a little bit more, but I mean, damn it, if you do not go in that line and you just feel like you are so important and you feel
I love Chick-fil-A.
like
Listen.
everything is efficient and
Yeah.
logistic and
clean and nice and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think they have great programs for their employees too.
100%.
Yeah. But
Yes. No.
know,
Listen, I
it's
think that
controversial.
those businesses are great. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're like you said, like they take care of their own for sure.
Yeah. But so to go back to what you were saying, yes, this program is like, okay, don't just get cage-free eggs, but get pasture raised.
So I thought it was free range was the right one to get. But now it's pasture raised.
Yeah. That's what they're saying. And so, like, am I going to go out to eat and be like, hi, do you have pasture-raised eggs? No, I'm not going to do that. But, like, it's going to help me at least make choices. I'm not going to starve myself. I'm not going to not live my life. But I like it because it's just teaching me how to make better decisions in eating.
It also stinks that you are, like, I feel like you're, like, in a video game and you're like, antibiotic chicken, like, right. Can't have that, like, and you're like just running for your life. Like, I don't want to have to think that hard.
Having kids, you don't realize how much you just mindlessly eat because they're constantly snacking and eating all day long. Like last night, I literally took a video of myself because I just so mindlessly picked up a fry and put it in my mouth
for no reason.
I was like,
you had no business. Like,
no.
You just did it because you
did
it.
Off of Sienna's plate because she didn't eat the rest of it. And I was always like, yeah, I'm going to finish the rest of this mac and cheese or the rest of this pasta or the rest of this fry. And I, like, took a video of myself and I sent it to my best friend. I was like, wow, like, didn't even know. There was not even brain thought involved in me doing this. Like, my body
You didn't send that text to me.
Went and did that. No, I sent it to Brittany. You were busy at the time. I didn't know that you wanted a video of me spitting a French fry out into a trash can.
Oh my God.
I'd certainly send it to you.
I was just going to say something and now I don't remember, but I think it was along the lines of, you know, I really don't want to have to think. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So growing up, you know, especially being like, oh, the pool guy's here. Okay. I just got scared. I thought we were under attack from like, he has like a long pole. When we were growing up, like Jersey, Philly, like we're tough. We're like, just eat it. Like, here's a hoagie, like, whatever. Like, here's a greasy slice of pizza. And I remember, like, you always used to make fun of Californians because they're like, oh, I have my sprouts and my avocado and like my Ezekiel bread. And now we're like, tell us the things. Like, tell us this like ancient knowledge that you guys have. But that's the other thing is it's easier to access this kind of food, like the better quality food in certain places.
Yeah, it really is. And the problem is the easier stuff is generally the unhealthy stuff. And that's why they talk a lot about like the socioeconomics to it and why there's more
100%.
obese and like in communities where there
isn't.
Well,
the new stuff is this Bill Gates appeal. Have you heard about that?
No.
It's this genetically modified produce. And basically, like, it's this, there's something with the peel, like the skin of the fruit, that it lasts longer. And it's in Targets, and it's, to your point, like, it's available. It's probably cheaper.
Yeah.
It lasts. The shelf life is longer. So you're like, what am I eating? Like, what is this?
Watching something that was like, once you start growing your own foods, and then
my Aunt Lorna just did it
to what you get in the grocery store,
yes.
You're like, what is this?
And the other thing that's scary is like how quickly the food store food deteriorates. And then like when you grow your own stuff, like you could grow tomatoes forever. And they sit in the bowl for like 2 weeks and you're like, oh, I should eat. Like they'd have mold by then if they're from the grocery store.
I don't know. Like I said, I've just been dipping my toe on this healthy stuff.
Do you guys have space for like raised beds or like gardens outside? Because I'm sure Sienna would like live for that.
Space for it is one thing, but mental capacity to do that.
Okay, I'm going to tell you this. So Eric and I during COVID, when we were out in Coronado, we got a veg pod. Look it up. It's like an Australian company, I think. And you can get big ones. You can get like you can probably get one that's like a 3x1, like long, skinny, and it has a dome over it so it keeps the bugs out. And you just screw your hose into it. No, Eric loved it.
I'm just sitting here giggling because I
No.
can only imagine what Mark would say. I had a basil plant one time because I was going to
I
make
kill them
sauce.
every time. Every time.
No, Mark asked, "Oh, that's so nice. Who sent us flowers?"
No. You know what's so funny? So Eric was like the anti-cat guy, and he's like, "Oh my God, like my girlfriend has a cat." This is his cat now. Like he always jokes. He's like, if we got divorced, like I'm taking the cat. And I'm like, this is my cat. Like they're like best friends. The only flower, like he knows what it is a lily. Because Phil ate a lily once and had to go to the ER. And Eric's like, I told you not to have these lilies in the house. But like so protective of the cat, like my fault. And I'm like,
yeah,
bruh, I've had lilies for 8 years and this cat has never been interested. But then you bring a kid home and the cat's like, I'm killing myself.
Totally not a plant guy. Still even just figuring out working with a landscaper, considering we've been like city kids our whole life. So I don't know that we'll be growing our own vegetables.
You know what else
soon.
Eric learned? And you'll know this because Florida, he knows what a bougainvillea is.
Oh yeah.
Those are everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And those are hardy. But no, get a veg pod, get seeds, and have Mark and Sienna do it. I promise you that'll before he takes a pee in the morning, he will go out and
Sienna
check on those.
Probably love it. They actually have her gardening at her preschool, and she does love it. Yeah,
it's veg pod. It's worth every penny because there's a reservoir in the bottom.
So yes, dipping my toe in this health thing, but I'm so on the other end of the spectrum and not like going crazy into the lifestyle.
You're interested in it, and you're not like burying your head in the sand.
And I want to do where I think is reasonable and what fits in to my lifestyle. I mean, Casey will send me these reels on Instagram of like, this has chemicals and this is killing you and this has this. And I'm like, okay, cool. So don't drive a car, don't have carpet.
Yeah, you said
don't, what was it? Like, don't eat eggs. Like, okay, got it.
But I will say, like, my Aunt Lorna has chickens and her eggs are noticeably different.
Yeah.
When Jack has like store-bought eggs, he gets eczema on his cheeks.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah,
and with hers, nothing.
Yeah.
And the egg yolks are like bright orange.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's truth to a lot of it.
But listen, I mean, just educate yourself. Just make smarter choices 80% of the time, 75% of the time. I mean, that's I can't I want your doctor's information too, or your nurse's information.
Yeah. Oh, and what I meant to say is because she talks a lot about the leaky gut. That's like the whole part of this is to heal the leaky gut that pretty much happens to everybody just because of the way that our food is and what we eat, and that it starts to come out in your late 20s, 30s, and 40s because it has been happening because
we've eaten Taco Bell for ages, and it's like
giving us
food.
Time to heal that, and then hopefully things will be better and you'll feel healthier. So I will keep y'all updated on that. If anybody wants the information, I'm happy to share it. But
she's gatekeeping.
I'm not gatekeeping. I will tell anybody whatever they want to know. I just like it. Again, I think the accountability is
DM leaky gut to Gianna and she'll share the information. Don't forget the because she might not know what you're talking about. The other thing that freaks me out, these parasite cleanses people are doing. Have you seen these?
No, and I don't know that I want to know.
I don't know the validity to this, but I just saw one. There's this doctor I follow, and it'd be really interesting to get her on. She said she had a client that had a 5-year-old nonverbal child. The parasite that came out of this child was I swear to God, like insane. No. There was just a woman who had like a parasite in her brain. Remember that?
Yeah.
There was like just a story in the news. Like it's. I need to do more research on it, but it's definitely
in the words of my daughter. No, thank you. No, thank you. Speaking of words, what's Jack's words of late?
No.
Yeah.
He does know a lot.
Let me tell you something. That doesn't go away.
He's working on bracelet because he has a bracelet that Eric got him, and he's working on bracelet. He says
Cute.
Kitty cat. We're working on truck. He loves trucks. We sit at the driveway and watch the trucks go by.
Oh, cute.
He's such a boy. What about
Cute.
Asher Man? What's he up to?
He's not really saying much yet. I like kind of think he's saying Baba sometimes when he's like
Aw.
upset and sees it like across the room and knows that I'm bringing it to him and has zero patience because he's a
big dude,
He's
and
he's a Demedio.
Yeah.
And he'll say mama every now and then, and like I feel
Yeah.
like he's starting with dada, but there's nothing consistent that
Right,
he's
right.
saying yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And
he's just the
he's
sweetest.
crawling.
He's army leg crawling.
Yeah. Thinking about it.
He's moving with his left leg and just kind of bringing the right one along for the ride.
This is fast though for boys. That's
You think?
early, right?
Sienna, I feel like I've stopped comparing Asher
Well, she was
to
the first
milestones
and
or
a
to
girl.
her.
Yeah.
She's just beyond. Like everything. She walked really late, but she was communicating very
Yeah.
early. She was saying mama by 6 months.
Little Mary Poppins.
Yeah. She has a whole bag of tricks.
Oh, practically perfect in every way.
She's just so cute. We literally have to have her on one day.
Yes. Well, she always comes over, and Jack like always loves the microphone. He's always like,
I know.
Hi.
We have to have a day where we interview them.
Ugh.
And be like, Sienna, what did you have today? I had eggs with cheese, and then I put a side of cheese, and then I put cheese on top.
Sounds like my kind of girl. It's like I would like cheese with eggs sprinkled in. Thanks so much.
That's her idea of a nutritious breakfast.
But I'm very picky with my eggs. I like to make them myself. Like Eric's always like, "Oh, let me make them for you." Like I'm really weird about like the cheese ratio, and I like to cook the salt in. I also only like to use brie or white American cheese. Not the pre-packaged white American. It has to be fresh deli slice.
Fresh deli. I'm a fresh deli white American person.
Brie is a game changer.
The yellow cheese, you might as well be handing me a sheet of plastic.
No, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
It tastes different. However, like Kraft macaroni and cheese is the best. Like Velveeta. Yeah, that's where yellow is okay.
Yes, agree.
But no, try
many of those like weird
brie.
Things like that. That's so interesting. I've never tried the brie.
So it's like fancy eggs.
Grated Parmesan cheese into.
That's because you're Italian. Like you probably like when you blow your nose, Parmesan cheese like probably comes out. You see like brushing your teeth with like
like you're any
cheese.
different.
Oh my god,
yeah, it does. Anyway, to today's episode, lovely Sara Walsh is
She's
here.
the best. She is a tough
chick.
cookie. Like
yeah.
Like rock bottom multiple times over.
Yeah. It was really nice to have her be as transparent as she was about it. Like really no holds bar. And was just like, this was the hardest thing I've ever had to go through in my life. And here's why. And here's how I responded to it.
Well, we both talked about it in that she was like, I do not want any woman, whether they're struggling, not struggling, going through like anything, to look at me and be like, look at her 2 perfect kids and she has the perfect life and the perfect husband and the perfect job and she's on TV, and she's like, that's not what it was. Like she's like, that's so far from the truth. And she's
because she talks about experiences where she did that and she looked at other women and said, oh my God, look at, they have the perfect thing. And she's like, you just never know what's going on behind closed doors, and that like you think somebody has it so easy, and like therefore you're the anomaly because it's so hard.
There's something wrong with you
for you trying to conceive or for you, you know. And at the end of the day, it's like literally everybody is having some sort of issue, and it's a shame that that's the way. But you know, this whole mission is to just have women understand that this is not any fault of their own. This is not something they're going through alone, and that we as women are all standing together and having each other's back and supporting each other in this crazy thing of life and conceiving and raising children. So with that, here's today's episode with Sara Walsh.
Sara Walsh, you are a superstar on everyone's television set. I, again, apologize for my stuffy nose. University of North Florida soccer star. So you are an athlete through and through. You don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. You have 2 beautiful children, twins, Breeze and Hutton. Just tell us about what you do for work and your family life.
First of all, that intro is really overblown. Not a star at any level. But I did play college soccer at the University of North Florida. I grew up playing sports. I have worked covering sports since the second I got out of college in all sorts of different capacities in different places. And currently I am on NFL Network covering the NFL. And I also recently in the last year joined TNT Sports for all of their coverage of U.S. soccer national team games. So anytime the U.S. women play or the U.S. men play national team games, excluding the World Cup, I host the pregame, postgame, halftime coverage. So that's been super cool as a former soccer player, getting to do that. And it's been a real challenge and a fun fall, sort of holding down two different gigs that are going full tilt at the same time. So it's been a busy fall, but a fun fall. And I love it. Oh, and then I have some kids on the side, all of that, yeah.
I was going to say, that's a third gig.
That's what I was
pretty
just going to
big.
say, is you and your husband are ships passing in the night. Your husband is involved in baseball. The nice thing is he's off for the most part of your busy season, but it doesn't make things any easier. So how do you navigate that?
So everyone's like, "Oh, how are you doing this?" And I'm like, "I'm not." I mean, you know, the analogy of like the duck swimming and they're like pedaling so hard under the water and like they're just floating. So my mother is a massive, massive help, and we kind of got caught in a situation down in Florida where we were here for spring training when COVID happened. We didn't live here. So we started, when we had these kids, we didn't live near my mom and we made it work and it wasn't crazy. I think there's just different seasons of people's lives where you're really busy and then there's times where you're not busy. And actually to your point, Casey, this was the first year he stepped away from baseball. And because it had gotten to be too much, like our lives were so out of
And he was
control.
also in Canada. Like, so
yeah, on top of
not
it.
only
so
was it baseball, but yeah,
he played. And then when he went into coaching, he took this job in Canada. And at first I'm like, hey, there's only one team not in the country. And this is what we're going to do. And Toronto ended up being awesome in terms of like super fun city to visit. But then when COVID happened, they had different restrictions than we did. It became really difficult to take the kids over the border. It was just always like, if you're traveling with kids, it's
always something.
It's not, like it's not the easy. If we were going from Tampa to Atlanta and I have 2 1-year-olds and I'm by myself, like
you're outnumbered.
It's not the easiest, but then we added in layers of different COVID restrictions, of having to have paperwork that prove they were your kids when you travel. It just ended up, it was a lot. It was a lot. And then it was really difficult. I think now it's weird when you're in something, you just kind of do it and you don't realize and you make it work. And you're like, hey, I'm going to go here. I'm going to do this. This person's going to cover me here. And I remember the last 2 years for football season, the day that baseball would end and he would come back, I remember just like this insane sense of relief. Cause I'm like, oh my gosh, tomorrow when I get called in, cause with my job, it's not a normal 9 to 5, right? So something could happen and it's like, we need you on air tomorrow at this time. And I had no other person. And this is why we ended up staying in Florida, because my mother was here. But the difference in my sense of relief when he was back in the country, because if I got called on something, no problem. They have a dad. The dad, their dad can take care of them. And I, for 9 months out of the year, wouldn't have that. And so it was that trying to juggle, and it was really, really hard. But like I said, you just survive it and you do it, and you everyone, and no matter what job you're in, you kind of just do what you have to do. But he took a step back from baseball this year, and it's so weird now because the season for people that miss the playoffs it's just starting. The playoffs are just starting, and it blows my mind that I'm like, there's a scenario you still hadn't come home.
Correct.
Because now in my mind, football started 2 months ago. And I feel like these kids in Florida, they start school early. They've been in school, so and early. Them starting school is a whole other ballgame that I didn't know anything about. I wasn't somebody that was really knew anything about kids, to be honest. And this kindergarten thing starts last year. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so much work. And I'm getting bombarded. I have 2 kindergartners at the same time. And
a boy and a girl. So definitely different interests on top of that.
Yeah. And it was just I felt like I was getting bombarded at all times. And I was alone, there was just no relief. And now thinking about, he would have, if he had stayed there another year, he would have gotten home yesterday or maybe today. And I'm like, I can't comprehend at all, even though I did it, how I would have gotten through the last 2 months. It's one of those things where you did it. So how'd you do it? No, and now when you're not doing it, now I'm like, I actually don't know. I don't know how I did it. So that's been a blessing, and that's not going to last forever. It was just there's different seasons in life, and there was a window of a pretty good window of a year where I know what it's like to have help, and it's appreciated.
It's funny that you say that because Casey and I are kind of living parallel lives and traveling around the country. We just recently settled and bought a house here in Naples, Florida. Same thing, kind of got stuck here over COVID, really liked it. Still traveled throughout the country, but then decided this is where we wanted to settle. Casey, as you know, traveling all over the place. And
Yeah, you
I
guys were
now
like
look at
Goldilocks and you
her-
found something. Yes.
Yeah, but I now look at her and I'm like, oh, I don't know how you do it with the baby and you're doing all this traveling. And I'm like, and she's like, but you just did it. You just,
Yeah,
were
and you
doing
when
that.
you get
And
a
I'm
break
like,
of it,
oh,
you're like, how
yeah.
did I do it? Yeah,
How
no,
But
I
did
don't
you do
know.
that?
Here's the thing that, and maybe Sarah, you can shed some light on this because so many women now do work and so many women have these goals that decades ago, our mom's generations, it was like, no. Like you stay home, you raise the kids. And so many women want to get out and have their own identity. So when you are surviving, like when you are going through the motions, like kids are fed, everyone's clothed, everyone's where they're supposed to be. Like I'm on air, my husband's where he's supposed to be. How easy is it to get disconnected from your husband? And then are there any things that you guys would do to like snap back into it and not just be robotic and surviving?
I think now, again, stark contrast, took like a full year off to basically be here. And, but yeah, I mean, I didn't have a normal life. It's funny you said that about like our moms and it's a different generation. So my mom worked, she was a school teacher, but I think what she has never understood about my job is that like, there's not a set schedule.
Mhm.
So she worked Monday through Friday. And when you're a school teacher, by the way, I'm not saying her job's not hard because I went to class with her like one day for
Right.
1 hour and I was like, couldn't do it. Like I had the worst headache. I was like laying on the couch and she was saying like, you're going to come to school tomorrow. I'm like, are you kidding me? That was like
Yes.
so hard. But she would never get called in on a Saturday or Sunday. Like that just didn't exist. And so working holidays didn't exist.
Right.
And I think she still is when I'll be in like 3 different cities in 4 days and 3 different games in 2 days. Crazy travel. Like she doesn't understand that. And she's like, that's not normal. She'd be like, can't you just say that you didn't? I'm like, that's not how it works because
Right.
my work experience is different. Everyone's experience, depending on what you do, is different. And so, but there is times when you say disconnected. I mean, there was times, especially like COVID, we'd go, I don't know if it'd be months without seeing each other, but definitely like a month or two, or I've looked at schedules where it just doesn't line up and there's just no way I can get there. And the kids added another layer onto it, but it was never kids or no kids. It wasn't going to be easy just because it was 2 conflicting schedules. And then Casey, you know this too, like the baseball season, even the off season short. And it feels even shorter because your months off are October, November, December,
It's holidays.
January, maybe.
It's
It's
family.
It's
It's
holidays,
travel.
so people
it's-
are
yeah.
rushing around. So take out November, you're not going anywhere because it's Thanksgiving. Take out December because it's all those holidays. So it's like October, not if you're deep in the playoffs, which is the goal.
Correct.
So you have January. And so for me, it was always just like, I felt like it's
Well,
a
the other
hamster
thing
wheel I
too
couldn't get
is
off of.
it's 2 moves. You move for spring training and then you
Yeah.
move again. No other sport does that.
Yep. It's and some of us move out of the country and some of us,
Right.
the 2 COVID. And I think that was the hardest thing is if you weren't in that Toronto thing, you wouldn't have known, but they couldn't even go to Toronto like the 1 year. So then they were moving to Buffalo and it would be like, don't get a place because that year it was like, don't get a place because plans could change. Maybe we get allowed to be back in Toronto. But so saying don't get a place and just run a hotel, that doesn't work with 2 babies. That doesn't work
Right.
with 2 toddlers. That doesn't work. It doesn't work with it, like single doing your own thing. No problem. Like that's not a problem. And so I just think what was hard for me is it wasn't, there's just nothing normal about it. And that's not to say there's not great things about anything. And I love traveling and we've gotten to see and do so many different things. But I also know like what I was doing and how we were doing it. It's not sustainable long-term. It's fun for a window. And I remember everyone saying to me too, you can do whatever you want with your kids before they turn 5. And then once they're in school, that's a different ballgame. It can't just be like, we're going to go here, we're going to do this. And it's true. It's a structure that until last year we didn't have. And it does change everything. And it does change what you can do. And it does change. I think my biggest eye opener is, like I said, how much work is involved of you send them to school, but I'm the one that's getting these assignments. Like I'm the one that's having to put these projects together. And
so it's not easier. It's not easier when you are tethered to one spot, or is it? And Gianna, you can weigh in too. Cause I mean, like you guys are planted, both of you.
Yeah. And we still haven't even felt totally planted because we still had our place in Nashville and we didn't know if we were going to do it permanently, but I sort of had to sit there and go, look, it's hard enough. Like things are hard enough. How can you make, and this I think applies to anybody's situation. Like life is hard enough. How can you make certain aspects of life easy on yourself? And I realized that without my mom, I was going to be just getting crushed even more than I was. So that's how we made that decision. Like at some point you just sort of have to like look at the facts and the circumstances in front of you and how can you make difficult situations manageable. And, you know, and that's how, you know, people make decisions on that. But yeah, in some ways it gets harder. I distinctly remember being in Indianapolis on the sideline in the middle of a game. It was in the third quarter. And like, I have one mom friend that texted me and is like, hey, her kids are in our class. And she's like, did you complete the turkey projects that are due for tomorrow? And I'm like, no. And currently I'm in Indianapolis and it's already Sunday at 4:00 and I'm in the third quarter of a game.
It's fourth down and I can't really do this.
And so that's not going to happen for tomorrow. And I just like, it's moments like that I'm like, what am I doing? What am I like? It's just, I've tried to be nice
they say
myself it happens.
They say the best hack for parenting is to live near the grandparents. And I find that very true. So seems
it's
like
not
you found that out as well.
Yeah. It's not even, and my mom was also, I mentioned like she was a school teacher, so she's better with the kids than I am. Like she knows what, like
she knows what works.
Oh yeah. Like she'll go through their folder and she's like, you didn't do this with them. And I'm like, I don't know. But like, and honestly, I'm not asking her to read I'm not asking my mom to read a teleprompter. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, she's going to beat me in that category, like hands down. And so, but I'm really fortunate that she was a teacher for like 30, 40 years. And so she like helps me greatly in that department.
So we talked about the split with work with your husband. There's a lot of times that he needs to be out of town. There's a lot of times where your schedules aren't necessarily lining up. You went viral in June for a rant that you made about golf. And I absolutely love it because I have been very fortunate to not have to be, what do they call it? Like a golf widow.
Yeah.
Because my husband doesn't play. But now we live in Florida and everybody and their mother is trying to get him out on the course. So
wait, so why did you like it so much? You don't even experience the pain of what I experienced.
Because I've had boyfriends in the past.
Okay.
And a father who was like gone to golfing all the time. So I like, and I hear it from other friends. And there was this reel that just went around recently that was like, oh, I figured out the way to getting 6 hours child free. And it was like these two moms
golfing,
downing high noons
doing like cartwheels.
On a golf cart. Yeah, doing cartwheels and like just doing whatever they wanted on the golf course. But so how did that factor in? Like, was there a lot of resentment of like, okay, you travel and you're gone all the time and now you're going to take extra time and go do this thing without us?
No. So the thing about the golf rant, which by the way, I never thought was going to turn into, I had no expectations. It literally came about. I was on Good Morning Football and the 3 guys that were on the desk with me were all golfing, talking about their golf plans for the next day. And there was some like rumblings about, I got to get my wife to get on board. And I get it. I've been on the other side, but I'm sitting there seeing the guy side of things. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, can I do a golf rant tomorrow? And the producer's like, sure, go ahead. Here's the funny thing about it. Matt, people are like, is Matt so offended? Like, was he? Matt helps me with it. First of all, he knows it's true. As do professional. When one of the PGA Tour players was like, "This is poetry." It's like, he's a and I'm like, "Oh, okay. Now I don't have to worry about anything else. Like, we're good here."
People are framing it.
All I was saying, as I was like, let me give you a little tip here, was the crux of it. Because like, then you know how Twitter is and people are like, you're the worst, you should be divorced, like you're the worst wife ever. And I'm like, am I the worst wife ever? Because he has spent an entire year golfing now instead of like being at baseball. And I'm fine with it. You know why? Because he takes the kids to school in the morning, so I don't have to.
Yeah.
And then he goes and golfs. And I don't care. Like he's got the kids out the door. He handles it. So there's a trip. So it wasn't as I more make fun of him because of the seriousness of which he takes it. And just these boxes and packages show up all the time because there's always a gadget. It's always the next gadget that's going to
take his game to the next level.
Yeah, it's going to get him on tour. Like if he just has this gadget, he's down in the garage. There's like nets. He's got the golf nets. Like with like video, he's probably got better video equipment than I have to do this, like recording swings, and like, he's just one of these people. And again, he stepped away from baseball, which was his whole life for a second. Right. He stepped away. And so he needs like that next like fix. And so that's his fix. But I think the thing that's sort of like lost in that is people think I'm mean. I let him, he golfs all the time. And in fact, when I did that golf rant, we were in New York City. We had the kids with us and we spent a week in New York City because I was on the show for a week. He brought his golf clubs to New York City. We live in Florida. He brought his who brings their golf clubs to New York City? And he like trucked out. I don't even know how he got there. It takes him on the subway. I don't know, to New Jersey and played for like, and it's not, a round isn't like short. So he played, he was gone for like 12 hours that day. And I'm schlepping these kids around New York City. So all these people that were like hating on me, I'm like, he's the one that's not complaining.
He's fine.
He's golfing. He's fine. I don't care. It makes them happy and I don't have to do it. And so the whole thing is like, if you say that it's gonna, cause it's always like, well, I'll only be like 2 hours. I'm like, no, you won't. Like at some point you like learn the lesson and I'm like, just say you're going to be gone 8 hours. And when you walk in 6 hours, I'm like, oh, what a win. You're back early. Instead, I feel like, and every guy does this and everyone on the set knew it when I said it. Like they all say like, we'll be back in 4 hours. It's
we're
not
going to a 9. No, you're going and eating. You're getting a big BLT. You're having 3 beers.
Right.
Then you have to pee and then you forgot your phone. Like there are a lot of things.
Oh, it's always the person in front of them that played slow. And I'm like, okay, then maybe golf is just slow because it's every time the person in front of you is slow. So it's not, that's just what it is. Like, just accept it. I feel like I'm accepting of playing golf. They're not accepting of like the actual time it takes to play golf. Like they just don't wrap their minds around it. But yeah, that was a fun little, it was a fun little viral
it was
moment.
The voice of every golf widow everywhere. I mean, women like probably just showed that to their husband and were like, see what she has to say. This is exactly
so
how
many
I
people
feel.
You know, it's so funny. So many people reached out and were like, you forgot. And I got this over and over again. You forgot to say that how tired they are when they come home from golf and how they need a nap. They walk in the door and then they have to go take a nap because they're so tired. They're like, you didn't factor in the post-golf nap time.
Hangover.
And down in Florida, when it's like when they've been drinking or it's really hot out, it's like there's a recovery period. So I, mean,
I don't know how they do it sometimes. The heat out there, like I can't. Walking to the mailbox sometimes takes me out.
Yeah,
I don't know how they're out there in the sun all day.
And then they like the courses that are walking courses because it's like this prestigious thing, and it's like you're exerting more energy and getting drunker.
I just don't, it's just too long for me. Like, you know what I mean?
No, I'm a 9 girl. I'll do 9. That's it.
Yeah. And like, that's fun. But it's just so long, for me, like as like a, like that, cause he's like, well, maybe if you got into it. And I'm like, I don't think so.
No. Thank you so much. Well, I've always been in awe of, you're just a wordsmith with captions. And like every photo you post is always the best because like somehow Matt will always have J's on and you'll be in this like gorgeous flowing dress with high heels and you'll almost have to like trick him into getting dressed up for things.
No, his getting dressed up is a t-shirt, jeans, and J's. And that's fine. But so I don't actually like, it doesn't bother, like people will say stuff and people comment and I'm like, I don't care what he wears. But actually people always comment on his shoes. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing. I could be in a sequin ball gown and they're like, sick J's. Like, and it's sort of like turned into like a running joke. And like, there's pictures and like what his footwear is not in it. People will be like, well, what shoes was Matt wearing? We probably had a discussion about your wedding, Casey, about what
100%
what you could potentially wear or what
get
like,
away
fancy
with.
J's. Yeah. But that's turned into like, in fairness, I'll give him like full credit. He was into the sneaker game before I realized it was such a thing. Mm-hmm. And like the sneakers are such a thing. Like there's
like
no
collector items.
Yeah. Like he bought me, I have nothing compared to him, but he bought me one pair. And it was so crazy because people would make and they weren't fancy. I don't know because I'm not in the game like he is. I don't think they were fancy. I think they were like a standard pair of J's or whatever. And I go through like airport security and people be like, awesome shoes. And I'm like, there's no pair of like fancy shoes I've ever bought that I get as many like comments as the ones that he bought. And so like literally like full credit to him. I'm like, good job. Like you're right. I'm wrong. Like your sneaker game's awesome. I have a lot of work to do on that aspect. And he's like, he's good about that stuff.
I want to transition to the reason for this month and the reason that we're doing this series of episodes. And that is in particular with your story is infertility and pregnancy loss. And your story, I remember reading it and just like sobbing.
Oh.
Because I feel like you were really one of the first people who were in the public eye who made a point, at least in my scope of view
Yeah.
in my world that I was in that television world. And you really made a point to bear it all and not, and I remember in the article that you wrote, you said, I didn't want just this picture of twins. I'm paraphrasing
Yeah.
here, but like these beautiful, perfect children. And I didn't want people to think that I didn't struggle and that I didn't go through anything. So sorry,
Yeah.
I'm getting so emotional, but I want people to hear your story.
I think you're right in the sense of, I feel like now you do see it a lot more. And I was super private with everything, which is ironic because then the way it came out publicly, which I did, but when I was going through it, so it's like goes back to what you're saying about your scope. When I was going through the things that I was going through, and this is, multiple miscarriages, and then it's the IVF road and all of that stuff, and just, bad news after loss. And I couldn't say that I could point to many people that I had known that had said anything about it. And I remember I had my IVF doctor, was awesome. And I loved him so much because he had a sense of humor, and I needed that.
Yeah.
And because things were so bad, like all I could do was like laugh about it in some ways, or like, that's how I would handle it. If I didn't like make jokes, like I just was going to drown. And,
Right.
And I remember like, it's when you are trying to get pregnant and you can't. And actually that wasn't my case. My case was that I could get pregnant, but I couldn't keep them. And when you're going through that, it's it's like the laws of attraction, like everyone's pregnant, like it's all you can see because you're so sensitive to it. And I remember I going through a loss, and like 2 days later having to get on an airplane, and I swear, I remember it was Southwest, and I swear to God, there were like 6 people in the like little thing where you line up and they're all pregnant. It's like all you could see. And so I remember in the years I was going through this, that's all I could see is everyone being pregnant. I remember being sent and doing a story with someone who like hadn't wanted to be pregnant, or like, we didn't mean to get pregnant. And like, it's always constantly that. And I'm just sitting there like, yeah, okay. It's really hard. It was just so in your face about stuff. And having to do like these Mother's Day episodes on Sports Center when I had just like had a loss. Like it was all of this stuff would compound. And I remember always going into the doctor's office and being like, everyone can get pregnant and everyone can. I remember one time somebody was on the cover of People magazine that was like 50 or older. And I'm like, they can get pregnant. And he's like, Sarah, they can't, like in the sense of people are getting a ton of help. Like people are getting far more help than you think. Everyone's not just getting pregnant as easily as you think they are. And he's like, it's far more prevalent what you're going through than you have any idea of. And so that conversation just sort of stuck with me, that I was like, if I can ever get to the point, and even when we had the twins, so the twins, we only had 2 eggs through all the IVF cycles we ever had. We only had 2 eggs. That's all they could salvage. And
you were 38 at the time you became pregnant?
No, I was probably like 35 when it started.
Okay.
Got pregnant at 35, got pregnant at 36, got pregnant at 37, all those things. And then we're like, we have to go through this IVF cycle because we have to try to like have eggs genetically tested or something, because I'm getting pregnant and it doesn't work. And it doesn't stay. Like, and I've had every form of miscarriage you can have and all of that stuff. But, and then the IVF thing is like a whole other like world of difficulty. And, some people have great results, and, there's times you're doing cycles and you're paying for them. And there's like, it's not even worth doing, like, or we can't salvage it, or you go through the whole procedure and none of them survive. And at the end of the day, we only had 2 eggs that we could genetically test. So we tested these 2 eggs. They came back okay. Those are the twins now. But when doctors will tell you, like, there's a percentage, and maybe I wasn't even that clued into it then, like the chances of just having 2 eggs and they both work when you put them in is not good. No, it's not good at all. Like I should have been like, there's no chance this is going to work. But I also didn't put them in. Like I just kept them on ice for a long time because I was like, this is literally all we have. And if it doesn't work, like we've exhausted every option. Like we have no options left.
So that fear of like potentially
Yeah,
not having your own children. Yeah. You didn't even want to look at it.
It was just the idea of, it is terrible we've been through, but here is a little bit of hope somewhere in like a freezer down in New Haven, Connecticut. Like
Right.
there exists a piece of hope that hasn't been taken away from me. And I felt like if we put them in, there's a good chance like there's no hope left in that capacity. And so the only reason, I mean, I'm sure at some point we would have put them in, but my doctor had a torn rotator cuff. and he calls me out of the blue and he's like, we need to put these in. And he's like, I'm going into surgery and then I'm not going to be here for a while. And he was going to leave the practice too. And I think he knew that and wanted to see this through and had been working with me for a while. So he's like, we got to put him in. Like, we got to just try it. And he's like, what if we put it in and like 2 of them work? Like, wouldn't you be happy? Like, wouldn't this all be worth it? And I just didn't want to put him in. Like, I just didn't want to do it. But I had no choice because he was going to leave. And so we put them in, and then they worked. But the first thing they tell you is, it's twins now. That doesn't mean you're having twins. Like, there's, again, the percentages. And for me, my experience, and I think anyone that has been through this would know this, if you get pregnant and you have a baby, all you know is like, you've been pregnant and it works. And you have a baby shower and you have, I got pregnant the first time we ever tried to like have a family. And I'm like, oh, okay, this will be fine. And people are like, you're so healthy. They'll say all those things. And, but there's people that are 22 and are healthy. And this is what I tried to, there's people that are 22 that are healthy, that there's no reason. It just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
It affects everyone. It doesn't, obviously it gets harder as you get older, but there's also a 22-year-old out there right now that's like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why can't I have this happen for me? I'm not, even over the age of where they say it's difficult. So I just think that like, what's taken from you is the innocence of the fact that this is just going to work. And I thought it was going to work. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was easier than like, who knew? Like, this is great. And I remember Krista Thompson, who, like, I remember immediately like bought me baby stuff. And then I remember having to go to Nordstrom and like take it back because I wasn't going to keep it like after I lost the baby the first time. And I remember, and she's like, did something just not work out with these things? And I'm like, yep. And like, just that pain of, things like that, you go through, and it forever would alter. And even if that was just, and they were like, the first time they're like, miscarriages are so common, like you'll be pregnant again, it'll be fine, like all of those things. It's still like in the back of your head. And then when it happens to me again, and then when it happens again. So even when it alters the idea that just because you're pregnant, you're going to have a baby. Like, that did not mean anything to me. It didn't mean that I was going to have a baby because I was pregnant. And having twins on the first time they look at an ultrasound doesn't mean I'm having twins. And so I never had a baby shower. I never even told people I was pregnant. I didn't tell anyone but my parents and Matt's parents that we were having twins. I hid it on TV. And for all of those reasons, because I just never really allowed myself to think.
Never believed it.
I never thought for sure they were going to be here. And like, again, I know people are like, you have to be positive and you have to have hope.
Right.
But I think the reality is when you've suffered losses in the back of your head, you know that this can be taken away.
Well, it's a defense mechanism. I mean, did you ever grieve that not being able to be excited?
I think a lot later down the line, but I always just told myself, like, we didn't have cribs. We didn't have anything.
Right.
Like, we had nothing like prepared to have these kids, because I thought in my mind, if they showed up, if they got here, we'll figure out the rest. Like, we would just be so lucky that they got here. Mm-hmm. A little bit sad, like later down the road, like it's just more like I didn't ever get to have the fun. I didn't have even a lot of pictures of me pregnant because I was so busy trying to hide it. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't get the like fun side of things and the part where you get to really enjoy it, because the reality, it was just so stressful to try to get to the next week and to the next week. And, it's like a countdown of like, when are they viable by? And if like by 24 weeks, they could potentially survive if something goes wrong. I mean, it was all of that. And I think I also did it under a really difficult, like miscarriages are not easy in any capacity, but it was like the traveling and the hiding it. And I think the one thing I learned that I try to tell people is that you have to do whatever is going to make a difficult situation easier for you. And what I did wrong is that I made a really difficult situation as hard as possible on myself. You know what I mean? Like, I just constantly this fear of hiding it. And even the miscarriages that I was going through, and I had one surgery and the doctor's like, you're going to be out of work for a week. And I went to work the next day, and nobody has any idea this is like going on. And being in like, I remember I was at Michigan to do a Michigan football game. Like this was it happened like every start of every football season in that period of my life when we were going through it. And I remember
how many did you have? You have 4 miscarriages?
4. Yeah.
But your first one in your health.com article, you said your first one you had on the desk I mean, you
Yeah.
showed up for work and you were experiencing miscarriage on the desk.
Yeah.
And you said, if I broke my ankle, no one would have batted an eye.
No,
But-
if I like stubbed my toe, I
Right.
would have no problem saying to the boss, like, and it would be very normal and like, yeah,
Right.
we got to get you medical treatment, like go to the hospital, whatever. I was in, we were staying, I think in Montgomery, Alabama, like, cause we couldn't get rooms in Tuscaloosa. I'm with an all male staff. I was with a co-anchor that day that I had never worked with before. So it's not even like, it was like one of my,
you couldn't confide in
friends.
someone.
Yeah.
Right.
Support. Yeah.
And somebody knew something was wrong and the boss is like, can you go? And like, to your point, if it's an ankle, I would have been like, I just
Yeah.
tripped and I broke my ankle. That sucks. Right. But I don't want to, I'm not even telling you when I'm pregnant and I don't know how to handle this. And I'm thinking I'm alone here. Like if I don't get back on this plane, it's just like irrational things that like when you get removed, like I'm like, if I don't get on the plane ticket that they bought me, like, am I going to have to figure out
You're
a plane ticket to buy
catastrophizing.
home
Right.
if I go to the well, I mean, I knew I needed to go to the hospital and I didn't know if I could get on a plane and I'm like, you know, going through all of this and then I'm having to go and there's like thousands of kids screaming behind you because
Yeah.
it's the game day set situation and put a smile on my face. And I just know the co-anchor who didn't know well, like looked at me right before the show started. He's like, are you okay? And I don't even remember what I said, but I was just like, you know what I was worried about? I'm like, I can't tell him the truth because I don't want to put him in an awkward situation. Like it just would make, I mean, how awkward are all these dudes going to be? It's really a like all male atmosphere in that regard. And again, to your point, Casey, no one really ever talked about anything there. And back then. And so I was so always worried about not wanting to make other people uncomfortable. Yeah. And so, and then even like a year later being on a set and I wasn't having miscarriage there, but we had already had to make arrangements for surgery. Like that was going to happen on Monday and I was in Michigan on Saturday. And I remember having to step out of a trailer to get on the phone, like with the doctors and stuff like that. And, you know, nobody has any idea what you're going through, but like, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable about like what's happening to me. And so I was so consumed with that. And like IVF, for anybody that's been through it knows, it's a ton of appointments that you can't control. Like you can't be like, I'm going to be there on Thursday at 2:00. Doesn't work that way. Like they do this blood work, they do these tests, they check stuff and they can be like, oh, they're ready to go. Like you got to come in tomorrow and we're going to do this procedure. You have no control over anything. And the stress level that put on my life of like, this can't happen on Friday. Cause on Friday I'm on a plane to go to this place. Like,
your schedule is predetermined in what, June? You know, like you probably get your assignments for the entirety of the football season. You know, granted you're taking out playoffs, but like, you know, you're going to be in Birmingham for 3 days.
No, actually it doesn't because it depends on like who was good and like what turns into a good matchup. And so they were in that phase of my life, they were making on Monday, you'd find out you needed to be on a plane Friday. And, and I was also on all morning shows there. And they, again, IVF people would know this, like they always do the blood work at 9. I've been to multiple clinics and the ones that I was at, it would be like blood work opens at 6 a.m. and there'd be a line. It's not an appointment. So there was nothing I could do. And you just sit in this room with like all these people that are going through it. And I remember there was a time it was like 45 to 50 minutes away from the ESPN studios and I had to be on. And I was like, I can't be at the meeting this morning. But like I was in New Haven, which was like I said, 45 to 50 minutes away. And the show was going to start in an hour. And I was like still there and like no hair, no makeup, no. And I'm just sitting there like freaking out. And this is a Sunday morning. So most people are not going from that to work on a Sunday morning. And I wasn't, there was just no like control over it. And I just never once had anyone that I could say like, hey, here's what's going on with me. I need some help here. Cause like I'm like just compounding everything that's going on with just not wanting to like drop the ball anywhere and let anyone know. And so, like I said, my biggest takeaway is like, I think people, what we don't realize is when you're in those situations, is there people that would be helpful, you know, or there people that want to help. Like there's probably not like this, well, screw her. You know what I mean? Like if looking back, there's probably could have been or should have been somebody I should have gone to and explained it to, but I was so fearful of repercussions, like all these things that I made a situation that is at base level insanely stressful, like 20 times more stressful. Yeah. And I did that to myself. You know what I mean? And I think people put burdens on themselves. And I'm not saying you need to walk into work and to announce it to everyone. I'm not saying that, you know what I mean? But like
there's a middle ground somewhere.
There's a middle ground that if you can like take a step back and realize like, hey, this is really hard. So like, what are some of the things that I can do to take a situation that's difficult and make it a little bit easier when you're already going to be dealing with like a difficult situation?
My heart is heavy listening to this, and I'm so sorry that this was your experience and this is what you went through, because it seems like it was just stress before, during, and after all of these processes. Like, how did you even take a minute to say, like, okay, I like, let me just breathe and let me be all right with this, because there's so many different stressful situations that you're handling all at one time. What did you do for your mental health during that time to,
If anything.
if
Nothing.
anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, or is there
Nothing.
something that you can look back and say, I've heard of women doing this now, I really wish I would have done that? Or,
Right.
you know, how did you keep yourself in a positive state at that time?
I wasn't. I mean, I was in a really bad place. Like there, I can't even like lower than low. Like there's just no way to get lower than where I was in life then. And, like I said, the only thing like I can say to people is find a way to make it easy on yourself. And I think it's different for everyone, and everyone's going through different situations. And, also for me on top of it, I didn't have someone around. Like Matt, my husband, wasn't here.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, he was
wasn't around
everywhere. Yeah.
everywhere, like on the other side of the country. So you go to an appointment, you get terrible news. Like I go to the hospital in the middle of the night because I'm bleeding, and like you're getting this news that like that's it, and like you're just alone. And so, like I said, it was really bad. I mean, there's like lowest point of my life, terrible. And so that's why I would say like find a way. I hope everyone handles it better than I did, because I didn't. And I think there's a lot of factors into why that, makes sense. I think some of it's the environment that I worked in. I think some of it's who I am. And a lot of it's bad luck and timing. You know what I mean? Like the fact that this happens to me and I'm on a set in Alabama, like
Yeah.
those are just things that you can't control. And so it was just one thing after another. But the one thing I can say to people that are really going through it, because I've been there, is, there's no way, like there's not like one thing somebody could have said to me and I would have been like, oh yeah, well that makes it better. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you have to go through it. And like at the lowest of the low, I can say that I've gotten past that, and didn't give up. Like, and I'm not going to say I was not positive, and anybody that knew, and when I say anybody, I mean like two people that knew, like know how beat up and I mean, like, I like to be quite honest, like suicidal at times. And like,
Wow.
like if like I'm being honest about stuff, and I would say like nobody knew anything. And, which we hear about all the time now, that people don't,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you never have any idea what's going on. And
They're
and
the
so,
happiest people, or they're the nicest people, or yeah.
yeah. And so, when you say things like, when I came out with that article, I think what became evident to me was that all the things that I thought about, like everyone had it so easy and nobody would have known what I was going through. But I think that I thought, okay, well, if out of the blue, I'm like, hey, I just had twins. I'm like, someone somewhere is going to be going through the same thing I was just going through. And they're like, look at her. She's now 37 and she just had twins.
She has
Right.
an awesome TV job and she's fabulous, and
look,
she has
she just
an
had
MLB
twins.
husband.
Get
Yeah.
pregnant.
Yeah.
She
And,
could just get pregnant. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that, it made me be like, and again, I was like so internalized about everything. I just really didn't talk about anything personal, but I
Well,
just felt like I wanted to do it that way.
Is that how you are as a person? Is that how you are with everything? Or was it heightened with this because you felt some sort of shame either around it, or because you were in a male dominated industry? Like, is it isolated to what you went through with conception, or are you like that with other areas in your life?
I wouldn't say that I'm like a super like overshare of like put it this way, like if I was breaking up with my boyfriend, I wouldn't be the girl that goes on Instagram and like putting the quotes up of like, I'll get you back. I don't know. So I don't think I'm like that way. So I was never going to be someone that was like sharing every like moment of my pregnancy. Like yes, there's part of it that I'm not that way. There were like job factors that made things difficult for me. That made it difficult to like, that just put me in difficult positions that I didn't want to have things used against me. You know what I mean? And maybe some of that was my own like perception of it being a problem. But, so yeah, it definitely, there's like probably like a combination of several things that made it harder on me than I think it should have been. And maybe people in other environments wouldn't have it that way. But, like I said, if I knew if I could get through it, and like at the end of the day, this works out okay. Cause there's a million times over that I'm like, this isn't going to happen. I thought that like, I just didn't want to be, I just wanted to be honest about like what, like to an extent of like what we went through to get there. And and I don't think everyone should have to be that way, but I just was like, I'm going to be like really like obvious about what happened here, in the sense of, because I know someone's going through the same thing and thinking the same things that I was thinking. And even though my thinking might've been warped, like somebody else is thinking that same thing, because when you're going through it and you're in it, that's all, it like consumes everything. Like it consumes everything. Miscarriages, the IVF stuff, it is like an exhaustive situation. And I am like, we had these kids and it worked out, and it's actually insane for us that it worked out. But I always tell people, in terms of like, don't give up hope, because, you know, as low as I was, like the next month, like everything could change. And it took a long time, and it definitely takes longer. There's other people that have gone through far worse than I have, and far more cycles and far more, you know what I mean? And if it works out just once, you're like, oh my God, like that was worth it. Like I never thought, the second they were born, like I really didn't think about the other stuff anymore. You know what I mean? In the sense of,
But they were born prematurely. So didn't you have like a whole new can of fear worms opened in that sense?
yeah, I mean, they weren't in like the worst shape in terms of, again, people have had it far worse.
How
and
many
we were
weeks?
sort of, they were 34. So that's not bad. They were 6 weeks early. So not bad, but we were warned throughout the whole pregnancy. It was high risk. It was, twins, which are a whole other factor of potential complications. It's pretty standard for twins to come early. So we weren't, I mean, obviously the day that it happened, we were like surprised, because we just weren't ready, because you're never ready. When you've never had a kid before, you just can't imagine. And, but it wasn't, I'll put it this way. It was a little scary. Obviously they were hooked up to machines and stuff, but I remember the NICU nurses, who are the best. And like the doctors will say stuff that scares you, because they're very medical and clinical. And the NICU nurses, like everything they would tell me would be dead on. Like the doctor would be like, they're not going home for another 2 months. And the NICU nurse would be like, they can get out of here next week. Like they just were right. They would be
everything I hear about NICU nurses is like,
oh my God.
They're the best. They're just they're a different breed. They
Angels
are
on earth. Yeah.
They're incredible. And, and then it's so funny, because you talk about like wanting to do, you know, work. So then I have these kids, and I'm on maternity leave, and I got laid off, like on maternity leave. And so I worked so hard to get there. But there was for me, like I needed the identity of going back to work, because your world is so not normal anymore. When you have kids and babies, and the two of them, and you've never had a baby, let alone two, your world is so like, what world am I living in, of just different needs, like it's gadgets, all these things that you're like, what am I doing? And so I'm like, I need some like normalcy. And so it was just honestly that like 7 years of my life, like just getting slammed with stuff. But I can say that I came out on the other side, and I couldn't be happier. And I say that to people that are at the lowest moment right now, like there is another side.
Yes.
But I also am very understanding that when you're in it, like that doesn't help, in the sense of, it's not overnight. Like nobody can click their fingers and say the right thing. Nobody can make like the pain just like go away of what it's like to go through those ordeals. You kind of just have to go through them and get through it. And like, it's sort of just like surviving, getting through them. I feel like I don't have, so when you kind of ask, like, what would I do? It's not like I would be like, well, I could go do this and it would make me feel better. Like, no, I'm like, I honestly felt terrible and terrible for a long, long time. And I do wish like I had enjoyed some things. I wish now I'd walked around and been like, I'm pregnant and it's two of them. Like I like wish I had been like, look how big my stomach is. It's awesome. And I just was like winter coat, like but that was like how I survived getting through that.
Let me go to once you had the babies, where was your head? Were you able to feel grateful for all of it? Or there's some women that I ask, because I know there's some women that go through IVF and that get the normal postpartum feelings of the baby blues, and it can be very difficult for them because they're like, I just tried everything to have this.
It's more pressure
this
on
baby.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't appreciate it, or I think it's hard, or I'm tired, and all these things that you would normally feel in motherhood. I've heard, I didn't have to do IVF, but I've heard for moms in that position, it could be very like a huge debilitating juxtaposition in their mind.
No, so that was not my scenario. I think I felt like I had fought so hard for so long that it was just this marathon that I had gotten to the end of finally. And so even when life like throws you the curveballs of like all of a sudden I had worked my whole life, which is part of the reason I had babies so late. And it was just like the irony of life of like working so hard to get where you're at, then to have these babies late in life. And as I remember being just like embarrassed because it made headlines of like, oh, the ESPN had like these huge layoffs, but like only one person was on maternity leave with twins, like had just had twins. And I was so embarrassed. And I was like, oh my God, I've embarrassed these kids that I just brought into this world. Like that's their mom is in this, like that. But this is exactly like what went through my mind. I'm like, I remember taking a picture of my daughter the day it happened and being like, I just like embarrassed this kid that like what's wrong with their mother that they were just born. And like, that's how the headline is being made of like, headlines being made over these kids because I lost my job. You know what I mean? And it just like, I felt like I brought shame to them. And then I would have to take a step back and I would be like, okay, Sarah, if the situation was reversed and this was you a year ago or a year prior to that, or a year prior to that, when it's loss after loss after loss, and someone said, hey, you can either lose your job or you can lose your kid. Like which avenue are you going to take? And like
100%.
It's very clear.
Wow.
And so I think that's the perspective it gave me, that which would have been a difficult time for me professionally. It was just like one of those moments too, though, where you're like, oh my God, I finally just got like it all together. And I didn't, I didn't, because then that was taken away from me. And I remember every year, cause I worked like this weekend morning sports center, and every year on Mother's Day, it was like a 4-hour torture fest of just like knife to the heart of me having to like do these pieces and throw to these stories. And like, the other parents would like have their kids come in, and I would have like, one of them had just had a miscarriage like the week before, and it just was like terrible. And so I was going to return like from maternity leave, like Mother's Day was like a week or two later. And so I was like that close to getting back and finally having like a happy like ending to that story. And then the other part of the other piece of the story got pulled away. But the positive was like, I had at that point, like such a good perspective of what was important in life that I was like, I'll survive the other stuff. You know what I mean? Like nothing, you're going to throw it to me now. Like I'm not going to survive. And like the perspective of like what's important in life. And I felt like, at least I told myself, like I'm doing these kids and me like a massive disservice if I'm going to be sad about the other stuff.
Because it's an ego thing. Like, and like I can attest to that. Like we're in the same field, and it's like if something happens with your career, it's a direct hit to your ego. In my experience, in my perspective, in my mind. I remember Oprah used to always say, you can have it all, just not at once. And I remember I used to be like, what do you know, Oprah? You don't know anything, Oprah. You have it. You know what I mean?
What's she ever done?
But that's the thing. Like Oprah has it all, but like Oprah doesn't have any children. And maybe that is something that she will, and it's like, you have these 2 babies, and it's like, yes, I have all these accolades. And yes, I reached national television and I fulfilled all my dreams, but like, right now I can't have that. And maybe in a few years I will have that, but something else is going to give. And maybe at that point my husband needs to walk away from baseball. Like you can have it all, just not at once. And I think, like you said, like leaning into that and being grateful is the number. And it's not easy. It's not easy.
No, but it was like really apparent to me. Like, I think if it hadn't happened, like you can look at it 2 ways. Like it was really hard to have that happen when it did, or you can be like, I'm really grateful that it happened when it did. You know what I mean? Like you could have looked at that 2 different ways. And well,
like you said earlier, it's really hard to see it when you're in it. But then when you get away from it and like a couple years down the road, you can evaluate and be like, okay, that happened. I don't want to say for a reason, but that I understand why things worked out that way. And I see the benefits of what happened. So maybe I need to trust the way
that's not what I wanted, but that's what I needed at that point in time. Yeah.
Like,
because what was that like, being able to stay? Like, did you immediately go out and seek another job, or what did you do immediately following finding out that you were in the layoffs?
We moved from Connecticut back to Nashville,
Mhm.
and which we had been talking about. How could we make that? We had been talking about that. How could we make that
there was
happen?
no way to make it work.
There was no way to make it work. And, one of the positives of ESPN is it's so big and there's so many different avenues. And we had conversations. Could I dial back and not be someone that's in studio like on a daily basis so that you had to live there? Could I have a job where you flew like, I'll get on a plane or whatever. We had conversations about how could we get back to Nashville, and there was no on that horizon at that moment that wasn't possible. So we immediately took the kids. We're like, we're going to go regroup in a city we want to live in, and so that was like immediate. And then I want to say, it happened in May. I worked the next football season. No, I might have taken a season off. And then I probably had a season off. And then I think I did some things here and there. But, it's like anything. And, people ask for advice. And you guys probably know this. Like when people ask for career advice, and there's so many people that want to be in broadcasting or the media industry and all this stuff. And I'm always like, if you want to make it happen, you'll make it happen. And you know what? There's a million no's out there. And I've had a million bad things happen. But I've also had a million like amazing things happen. And after that happened, it didn't. And I said this to somebody this week, actually, that had unfortunately been laid off. And I was like, listen, here's the deal. This happens to so many people. And I'm like, and you will find the next thing and you will rebound. But here's the problem. We never, be it a job, be it a boyfriend, be it a miscarriage, the rebound doesn't happen when we want it to happen, which is immediately, right? Like the boyfriend breaks up with you, you want a different boyfriend the next day. You lose your job or you don't get the job you wanted. You want a better, different job the next day. You have a miscarriage. Like, what do you want? Like, you want this, you want to try
You want two babies. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't happen. It never happens in life. If it does for you, good for you. But it doesn't ever happen as fast as we want it to, And so like, I've said that to people, and I'm such an example of it because I feel like I'm so fortunate to be in the spot that I'm in now, and I'm having the best time, and it's great and it's awesome. And I don't feel bad saying that because I've been in really, really crappy times. But I wouldn't have had all of the good things if I didn't have the bad things. Yeah. But I tell people all the time, it's whether you give up or not, and especially in that industry, like you're going to get a million no's. And I think like people in acting or actresses will say the same thing. You know how many times you get rejected before, and how many people go, okay, well, I'm going to quit and leave and be done with this. And, same thing, but I will say this, like IVF, like I think it's mind blowing to me how expensive it is. It's mind blowing to me that there are people out there that can't do it and can't start a family simply because of money. That it's not covered by insurance, that it's not. And so like the difference between somebody who would be these amazing parents that can't be parents shouldn't be money. Like that sucks. And so like, I just want to like say that in the sense of there's always hope. There's always a look. I was down to my last 2 eggs, and I don't know what that would have looked like because there's somebody that has been down to their last 2 eggs or couldn't do it. You couldn't do it, and it's not possible. And that happens. But I think it opens another avenue for something else, right? Like we might have adopted, like I still would love to adopt. And like you're never out of hope. It just might not look the way that you envisioned it looking. Yeah.
But sometimes that ends up better than what you could have expected.
Yeah. It's just a matter of like how far are you willing to go in terms of not quitting? But I just wanted to be like clear on like quitting, because I know that there's people out there that's like, I did everything and it didn't work. Like this thing didn't work, but something can work. Like something can happen if you choose to keep going. And I kept going at a lot of times, but also the reality is, and I don't like being a fraud, like I wasn't like poly positive, like behind the scenes. It just wasn't. But you can do that and not give up.
Tell us about your little ones, Hutton and Breeze. What are they like?
I have a boy and a girl, and one, if she's not going to be in this industry, I don't know what she's going to do because she's in trouble for talking at all times. Like literally at all
Apple
times.
doesn't fall far from the tree then, I guess.
Except when she hears a no, she'll be like, no. Listen, I'm going to start on Monday and you're going to give me a $20,000 raise. Like, and I'm going to take your parking spot.
She's, so it's funny because, my son's just insanely athletic and has no confidence compared to her. She is not athletic and has the most confidence in the world. And as we all know, like in this world, like what gets you places, like confident.
Yes.
Like
We
I'm
were
talking-
just talking about
we
that
were
before you
just-
came on, and I said it's not. We
blind
both
confidence.
said it's not about your skill set because so many
Yes.
people get jobs that they're in the quiet of their mind, in the deepest, darkest corner. They're like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But if
Yes.
you approach
Yeah.
every day with confidence and you ask for help and you better yourself and you're willing to learn, I think you can do whatever you want. But
Yeah.
your thing that you do is they are very competitive kids.
Oh, super
Like you do
competitive.
those like
That
gladiator races
series-
around
oh
your
my God. What do you call
my
it?
God.
Like lessons in something? What do you-
Sportsmanship.
I have a lot of. So
Lessons
I
in
didn't.
sportsmanship.
Again,
Oh my God, it's so funny.
they I didn't, as someone who wouldn't even admit that they were pregnant, and not share stuff, and then I had these kids and I just had this change of heart, but they also were so funny to me that
Right.
I also, again, I say all this stuff and I'm like, oh, I'm so fortunate to have kids, and then I'm the first person to make fun of my kids. But I feel like we operate in a house of humor. But I've
Yeah.
had different segments over the years. I didn't mean to turn into segment. I'm not trying to be like a YouTuber or something, but I would just put them on Instagram, and literally it's the
Yeah.
only thing people care
It's
about.
my favorite thing.
But it's the only thing people care about. So when they were a little bit younger, we did lessons in sportsmanship, and they would race
So
around the
funny.
kitchen. But it was just like takedowns, it was cheating, it
fake
like always
crying.
fake crying,
Yeah.
tears.
Like there was
and
one
like,
where your daughter
flopping.
fell and
Yes,
your
flopping.
son, your daughter fell, your son went running over to her, and you were like, oh, I thought he was running to like help her, but really he was just pulling her out of the way because he needed to scooter by her.
yeah,
or she
like,
would fake
they-
fall and then look for him to help, and then she would take the
off.
lead. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just really, they're really like manipulative in the funniest way, like with each other. And then I had a segment for a while, and they haven't been giving
Is this
me
the gymnastics
cheerleading.
ones?
No, the
Oh.
other one I really liked was Lying Liars, where they would get caught doing something, and I would like just berate them with questions, and she'd be like, "I didn't do that," and I'm like, I'd like rapid fire questions, and I'm like, "Who did it?" Like she did this thing where she lost a ring, and it's like a 10-cent ring, but she loses everything, and I'm like, "So if I give this to you, you're not going to lose it." No, I'm not going to lose it. And then it's like, I know she lost it because I found it somewhere, and I pick it up, and I'm like, "Hey, where's your ring?" And she's like, "Oh, it's in the bathroom." I'm like, "Is it in the bathroom? Can you get it?" And she's like, "Well, it might be in the bathroom, but it might be here." And I'm like, "Well, that's not what you just said." And like we do this whole thing, and she
Oh my
like they're
gosh.
lying liars, but she will sell it. Like she will
Yeah,
sell it.
she
She's like,
believes it in her heart.
she will sell anything, and it's actually incredible, and it's a skill set. And like you said, she's gonna there is, and then the most recent one, which has been a real popular hit, it's right up there with the golf rant, is Tale of Two Gymnasts, because my son is really good. He's just very athletic, and she's talking the entire time in class. She's can't do a cartwheel, but thinks she is incredible. Like thinks she is incredible.
I relate
and-
to her a lot as a
but
human
like
being.
that's what you need. So here's the thing: like she's the girl that falls off the balance beam and's like, "You didn't give me a 10." And the judges are like, "Well, you fell 3 times," and she's like, "Yeah, my routine was incredible." Like it's actually, and my mom will be like, "These are so mean. You can't." I'm always expecting, like, I always obviously expect the worst from people on social media, so I'm always waiting for someone to like mom shame me. I actually don't get it. Like I don't. It's
Good.
shocking to me. Like if I do a Tale of Two Gymnasts and there's 100 comments, the only negative comment that like, "This is so mean and you need to stop," is from my mother. And she's like, "That's
Yeah.
really mean." And I'm like, I don't know. 99 other people think it's really funny. And I'm like, I can make fun of her when she thinks she's amazing. And like, it's not hurting her feelings. Like
she
thinks
doesn't
she's
care.
great.
No.
She does not care
No.
what you think. No, she.
No,
good
people
for
are like,
her.
"You need to pull her out of gymnastics. She's not good." And I'm like, she thinks she's great. You tell her she's not good. So Tale of Two Gymnasts is she's actually been getting better, which has sort of been sad for me lately. 'Cause
Is
I'm
she
like,
able
"Oh,
to
I
do a
don't-"
cartwheel yet?
She's not going to land it every time, but like the brother's doing like backflips with no hands, and I'll say that she's like more focused in class, where she would just be like chatty. She'd like fall down into walls, and like last week when I was there, she was listening the entire. I'm like, "Who is this kid? Like, I don't know this one." But yes, I had to be at school this morning. She won an award for being like most inquisitive. She asked the most questions, and the teacher's like, she answers all the questions, and then she answers everybody else's questions, and then she answers the questions I don't want her to answer. And I'm like, "Yep."
She asks a question and then she answers it.
She's like, "I got an answer for that." Yeah. All I can think of is, do you guys remember that Reese Witherspoon movie? And she was Tracy Flick. Was it Election? And she like, all she did is like
Oh,
raise her
yeah.
hand. She was like the annoying kid in the front of the class. I'm like, "Is that my kid?"
Oh my
It
God.
might be.
Wait,
The other
okay,
one's
so
in the back doing
she
gymnastics.
loves to talk. She has a great ego, and she loves asking questions.
She's beautiful, and she's
she
drop
needs her
dead
own
gorgeous.
podcast
Yes.
immediately. She's a future podcaster.
You know what's
She's
so
a
crazy?
star.
They're into these like YouTubers, and then she goes the other day, and I'm tired. I'm like trying to not let them watch it because the stuff they watch is just nonsense. And she's like, you don't want me to be a YouTuber? You don't want me to make money? And I'm like, yeah, I want you to make tons of money. So if you want to do all this dumb stuff and make like $10 million a year right now, I'm not stopping you. Like, go. I would be all for that, but you're not. So can we turn it off because it's annoying?
Oh my God. Yeah, she's like, well, buy me toys so I can review them.
Yeah, like
isn't that what they do? Like that's the thing. Yeah,
I think that kid makes $30 million a year
It's
opening
insane.
toys.
It's insane. I know.
But the stuff they watch is honestly, it's so dumb. It's so
mind-numbing.
dumb. Yeah, it's mind numbing. And I'm like, you guys, I don't understand how you guys are not annoyed by these voices. And again, this is where I'm not a good mom. Like they're watching some kid the other day, and he's so annoying. And I go, this guy has. I was like, he literally has no friends. And I don't even remember. I'm like, this kid's never left his basement. He has no friends. You guys have to stop. And she was like, comes up to me, and I can't remember what his name is. Let's just say Greg. She's like, Greg does have a lot of friends. Rob comes over all the time. I go, who are you talking about? And she's like, Greg on TV. I go, you know who Greg's got coming over to his house? Like, she's so funny, and like they're invested. But again,
okay, I have a counterpoint to that. Like, are we not like that with reality shows sometimes? Though we get very invested into our characters.
Yeah,
you.
No, I'm into that. I definitely am into it. Yeah, I'm into it, but I don't know. Them watching somebody play video games, I'm like, I don't get that. I'm like, don't you guys want to play the video games? You want to watch somebody else play? So here's to that. I don't want to watch somebody else watch my reality show. I want to watch the reality show.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
I'm not watching.
Okay, so tell me about your reality guilty pleasures. What are your favorites?
Housewives. And by the way, like I'm very so like Matt will get on me and be like, he'll get on me and be like, oh, he tried it. He tried his golf rebuttal was like, oh, well, you are watching reality shows. I go, yeah, it's 1 hour. The OC is 1 hour. And like, and I don't do all of them.
And you're probably cleaning the kitchen and doing wash while you're watching it.
That's being a little generous, Casey. Not exactly. I'm in bed. That's the end of my night. Like, that's my treat at the end of the day. No, I'm watching OC, which just they're in the reunion, and who else was on? Oh, the new New York, and I'm like,
how
so
is
sad
that?
when it ends. It's good. I wasn't into the old New York.
Yeah,
like I couldn't. There's rarely are there ones that I can't get into, but New York was one of them. But so I've tried to get into the new one. But then when they end, because I don't like watch a ton of that. Like I watch one. So if I'm watching OC, I watch OC once a week. And then when the season ends, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with myself? So, but I don't do it like exhaustively the way that Matt would portray that I do.
Like
if Matt was into reality TV,
marathon.
he would watch all of the Housewives.
No, so I'll again, credit to him. He brought this point up the other day. And I'm like, you're right. He's like, I will watch your shows, and he's like, and I will go to the movies like of things you want to see. He's like, but you won't watch any of my shows. And I'm like,
because there's so many shows. I say, you're watching Loser You again. And he's like, it's not called Loser You. It's called Last Chance You. And I'm like, you always find these shows. You know which one we did just start watching last night was the Beckham Show. And I really like it
watch it
because there's a sprinkle of posh in there, and I love it. And I'm like, okay, this is a united front. This flies. I will sit here and watch this.
So I'd watch that. We'd watch that together. But in his credit, like, so he watches everything that he knows. He's like, there's no chance you're going to watch this, right? And I'm like, yeah. So then he'll binge and watch his own thing. He watches a lot of TV, and he's also super into movies in a way that I'm not, like super into them. Like he had to go to like, when Oppenheimer opened, like he went at 10 a.m. the morning to open, like super into that director. He's very hardcore into that stuff. And he knows I don't go and support him. But if I went to a romantic comedy or like Barbie, he'll go. And he's like, I will go to your stuff, but you will not do mine. And I'm like, and you know what it was? There was a moment in time. There was an exact moment in time. I didn't know what Mad Max was. This is early on. We were married, but like, I don't know if we'd even ever gone to a movie together. And so I know nothing about the movie. And I just go to the movie with them. And I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
And you are about to have a seizure. I'm
like, what is this? I'm like, it's just a car chase across like a desert, and then they just turn around and go back the other way. What am I watching? And he's like, this is going to win all these Academy Awards. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And he was right. He ended up being right. And he's like, you don't understand movies. You don't understand anything. But he was like, I'd rather not go to a movie with you ever again if like you're ruining it for me. And so we don't go to movies together unless it's like that. But he will watch Housewives. Like he's in. He likes Potomac. He'll do it.
My husband is a Bravo watcher, and it's a wonderful thing for our marriage because at the end of the day, when we both just want to like decompress and kids are in bed and we want to relax, like that's what we throw on. It's mindless and it's great. Okay, so with the experience that you have in the sports industry between being on TV for it and covering it, but also playing it yourself, what are some things that you want to impart on your kids about sports, and are you going to let them play?
Yeah, like we'll let them do whatever they want, obviously, well, to an extent, because if we let them do what they want, Hutton would be living by herself already. She really would. Yeah, I mean, Matt wants them to be golfers, obviously, or he'd love them to be a tennis player and be like out on tour. But we would let them, do whatever we want. Like the one thing, like we try to impart on them, and I think having twins helps this, is like Hutton's like a little spitfire. Like again, not as athletic as her brother, but she's gritty, and I love it. Like on a soccer field, she's gritty. She is not as good as him. She can't outrun him, but like she'll like shove a person down like to get the ball. And my mom's like, you need to stop that. And I'm like, I don't know, do I? Like she's kind of
like the glue. Like she's like the clubhouse guy.
Yeah, like you need people like that. And she's like, you don't tell her to dial back being aggressive. And like she's kind of like slinging some boys to the ground, and I love it. And my mom's like, it's really poor sportsmanship. And I'm like, okay, I'll tell her. And I'm like, that's what makes her, like within reason. She's not like punching someone, but right. But yeah, I like, he needs more confidence. Like he just gets dominated by her, and I don't understand it. And so like, I think, for her, like I hope she never loses that kind of confidence and that belief in herself. And I just want them to be tough in the sense of, don't be whiners. Don't be like, I'm like, we got to suck it up and do this. And like, I've tried to impart that stuff on them and to be good human beings to other people. I don't care. Like, like they're in this phase where, not phase, but again, like they have a ton of homework and they're in the first grade. And I'm like, I don't remember doing this in high school or college.
Those stupid turkeys.
Like what the craft project. And like, I've just learned to be, look, there's like, I feel like there's really good moms out there, and I'm just not one. There's things you're going to be good at in life and things you're not. And I'm not cut out for certain mom things. Like,
we talked about that. Like the PTO thing is hard.
I'm not like, it's a tough like world for me in terms of just it. Like, and there's people that they're great at that. And like, I have one girlfriend, and this is where I think she's great, is like, she realizes that about me. And she like, when the one that called me when I was on the broadcast, and she's like calling because she's like, she knows I'm not good at that. Like she knows I probably don't know. She knows like my mind is.
If I didn't do it, then there's zero chance that Sarah did it. I should call her.
No, she did it, and it's got the glitter and the sparkles, and it lights up. She's that, and like that's great. And but she also doesn't judge me for not being that, so I love her. And so it's kind of like, hey. It's always like, I'm sure you know this, but I thought like there's been times she's like, I'm sure you know this, but there's no school tomorrow, like that kind of stuff. And like, she knows I don't know, like, and you need people like that in your life, because then there's the judgy kind, and there's the people that are gonna like kill the class projects, and I know like I'm not going to be that person. Like that's not necessarily what I bring to the table, but I hope I like bring to the table these kids are good people and treat other people well and have broader horizons of, they've gotten to travel around a lot. We, even when they were born and we moved from Nashville to Connecticut, I mean, they were in, from the time they were born to a year old, I can't remember now, but it was like they lived in 6 or 7 places in the first year of their life. And I do still feel guilty. Like I worked so hard, and this is stupid. And I don't know if this is like a woman thing, because my husband doesn't think twice about this. And he's like, who cares? I'm like, I never got to bring them home to like a baby room. Like I didn't have a baby room.
No, that's a thing. I'm convinced that it's like a gender thing. It's like, that is one of like the great mysteries.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that in the beginning.
Remember? Yeah, he's like, do you remember what your baby? You have no comprehension what that looked like, and I'm like, of course I don't, right? And I just felt bad that I felt like I worked so hard and I didn't have, and you see all these influencers, these videos, and I did the nursery. I never had a nursery because we didn't put one together. We got back when we moved, we had them in Florida. I was down there for maternity leave because we were down in Florida when they got pulled early. And then when I returned to ESPN, we landed and I was laid off the next morning. Like and I was like, I can make this work. I can do this. So then we immediately moved back to Nashville, and then we were in a condo, and then we were looking for a house, and we bounced around, and they slept in pack and plays. But then they went to spring training, then they, and so you're renting whatever apartment you can barely get because it's hard to find rentals.
It's insane.
In that time of year. It's a stressful thing, and it's like way more stressful when now you have 2 kids and it's all their stuff. So the first year of their life, like I don't even know when they didn't have a crib until they were over a year old. And I just felt like so guilty. Like it's just like I never had that like room that you walked in and I got to decorate it. But they'll sleep anywhere. They'll do anything. Yeah. Like,
it's not so much of the experience for them and like, are they going to remember in 20 years, but it's an experience for you as a mom, especially because you said you didn't really embrace the pregnancy. The birth was pretty traumatic. It's like, you just want something.
I just wanted like some little normalcy. Yeah. Like something that was normal. And so then you do look back and I'm like, oh, I didn't get to have that. I didn't get to have a baby shower. I didn't get to have, I didn't do like a reveal. Like
Same.
I didn't do any of those things. But
my not doing it is a protest to not doing it.
Oh, well, good for you. I mean, that didn't used to exist in the way it does now. But, and like the pressure on that, you know what else didn't used to exist the way that it does now? I'm going on a real tangent here, but when you bring up gender reveals, when you guys went to homecoming, have you seen these like homecoming, when people ask someone to homecoming or prom now, it's like an engagement. Yeah. Like it is like it's like a gender reveal, like how gender reveals now are like a plane flying over and like a cloud exploding with like blue dust. These homecoming, like I look at stuff sometimes, like people post on Instagram, I'm like, wait, did this high schooler get engaged? I'm like, oh wait, no, this is just a dude asking like his friend like to go
that they don't even like each other. Like you just have to do it for Instagram. Like I remember I ordered a Princess Diana replica crown for like my sophomore prom when I had a full like face of braces, and everyone was like, really, you're wearing a crown? Well, like that pales in comparison.
But like, can you imagine the pressure on these kids that you have to come up with basically a proposal? Like when did
that's going to be your problem in 6 years from now? So start thinking, lady.
No, I know. I can't even imagine like what's going on. So like when people are like, you're putting this on Instagram and she's going to see it. I mean, she's going to see it by the time she gets of that age, like Instagram. It won't be Instagram.
It'll be totally different.
It'll be something else. Like
holograms.
So they can beam each other into each other's room, which is scary. But like, so that's why I don't worry about it. But it's just when you said that about the gender reveal thing, it just made me think of these homecoming, or they call them promposals. Have you seen that? That's what it's called.
Promposals. Going back to babies, you know what wasn't, Gianna and I talked about this. What never was a thing was a sprinkle. Like, isn't a sprinkle? It's when you already had a shower and you don't need that much. You just need a little bit.
I think so. Yes, I never heard of a sprinkle. Like if we asked, I'm sure any of our parents, they wouldn't know what a sprinkle is. But I'll say this:
you would get hit with a Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's what I got hit with.
That's how my parents would be. But at the same time, if you want to celebrate that you're having a baby, awesome.
Yes,
like celebrate that you're having a baby, and you should. And I've even had talks with people that have had miscarriages and like are in that same fear that I was, and so they don't want to like go down that road. And I will say I regret that I didn't allow myself a second to enjoy it. Like I did not allow myself a moment of peace of like, this might work out for you. Like it was just a very cautious, okay, can we get to week 20? Can we get to week 22? Can we get to week 25? To me, it was
you lived in fear.
I lived in complete fear. Like, can these babies survive? That's all I cared about. And so, and I'll be honest, it probably, if I had had a baby shower, like seeing presents, like probably all I would have thought is like,
it would have thrown you over the edge.
You're going to have to return them. Mm-hmm. Like, you're going to like, look at this pile of stuff. Like you might have to return. Like these might not be for real. Like these might not be, that was just, and again, I think most people, if you've been through it multiple times where it's never worked out. And I think it would be different too if, because this happens in so many different manners of ways. And I'm not saying that it's harder or easier, but like, I think there's people that have a baby, right? Have no problems, have a baby normal way, and then have a miscarriage. And then there's it's called, what is it? I think it's called secondary infertility, where like, then you can't get pregnant again, or like there's, people go through so many different things, but you knew at one point, at least, what it was like to get through to get through unscathed. And I never knew that. And if you go through multiple things, it just scars you of like, so I tell people, I say all that, and then I'm like, so don't do what I did. Like, even though it's sort of understandable, but I'm like, if you can allow yourself to enjoy it, like, don't feel guilty, taking a moment to be like, and by the way, there's also people that I know that have been through it that get pregnant and they're like, I'm going to announce it right away because so many of them have gotten taken away from me that I want to like validate this into existence. And so I always try to think like there's not a right way or a wrong way or a way to do something. It's doing what's right for you,
Yeah. That's a whole topic that I've touched on in other podcasts that I've done about like this whole society thing of like, you're not supposed to announce it until it's 12 weeks. That's kind of taking away the validity of it and saying, so people say like, oh, I had a miscarriage. Like, well, when did you have it? Oh, at 10 weeks.
Well, that's not,
it wasn't even like,
right.
Time yet. Well, what does that mean? Like, just because it's become the standard on social media to announce at that time after your first trimester has certainly made things a little weird too.
I just think people have to do like what's right for them, and like, the judging or whatever. I mean, again, and people, it comes from like it comes from a place of like people's experiences. Right. And so I do, not very many people like knew that I was pregnant, but if you caught me on the right angle of a camera or something, you could figure it out. And I just remember someone being like, I didn't have it bad. Like, I wouldn't say that I was getting like stuff online, which a lot of people do, but I just remember someone being like, why do you think you're hiding your pregnancy? And I'm kind of just like, why do you think you're out? There's a reason, right? Like, you think you're outing me for it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason. Like, it's not because I don't want to be pregnant, or it's not because, like, there's a reason, because I don't know if I will be next week. You know,
and
what
I
mean?
also
so
don't owe you anything. That's the other, I guess, like, pressure, or the other like expected behavior is that like, if you are on TV or if you put yourself in a certain position, like, you are expected or you're mandated to share everything. And that's the other part that you have to protect.
I remember being like, I'm going to try to be as quiet about this as possible. Or I remember thinking, how long can I hide it? How long can I hide it? And my husband's like, I don't know how to tell you this, but this is a losing battle for you. He's like, there's no way you're going to get to 9 months pregnant and no one's going to know. And especially with twins. And I kind of did. Well, because I didn't get to all the way to 9 months. Yeah. Like I said, if you were next to me in studio, you knew. But if you shot me straight on, like, I just got lucky in I could sit certain ways. I could put certain things up that not.
But how was that? How was that at work? Like, when somebody would be like, "Oh, are you pregnant?" You're just like, "Yeah, I got to read." Yeah, like, no one said anything.
No one really said anything. A couple people that I worked with on a regular basis, I had told, but I remember you would sit there for SportsCenter. You'd sit in these things. They're called like show pods. So, because there was like a 6 o'clock SportsCenter, a noon SportsCenter, whatever. So you'd sit in these like pods. And I remember there was a girl that was in our pod that was pregnant at the same time as me. And she talked a lot about it. And I was sitting there and I'm like, nobody knows, like, I'm the exact same amount along as her. And so they would have random conversations and I just wouldn't say anything. And at the very end, people knew, but also I remember being right before I had them, we were in Tampa for the national championship game was being held in Tampa. And there was some like party event thing and we get ready. It was like I don't want to say red carpet, but like, it was like one of these entrance things too.
Right.
Like, basically a red carpet kind of thing. But like, I'm not trying to pretend we're at the Academy Awards, but like who was it? It was this guy, Jay Crawford, who I worked with and I loved. And we had done shows together and someone looked at me, a woman, and was like, oh my gosh, congratulations. We're so happy you're pregnant. Cause like women know. And Jay's standing next to me. He goes, who's pregnant? And I'm like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, what? And I'm like, Jay, I'm pregnant. And like, and I was having like, again, by the way, like, guys aren't super like, some of them are, but like, they're not like super perceptive. Like, they're not like on top of like looking for, and
but then then sometimes when they are, women are like, how dare you? And they're like, oh God.
No. And so there's also, so that's the other thing. Like, it's touchy, right? To say stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so no, I didn't get asked a lot. I didn't, like certain people that needed to know, like knew. But it was, what it was, is there just wasn't an announcement, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, if I was in a conversation with somebody, like in front of them, we would have a conversation about it, but there was never like a public announcement. Like there was never a post. There was never anything. I never said anything about it on television. Like there just was never that public announcement of it happening. And to your point though, where you're like, why do we think, and there's like celebrities out there and we're like, people think that they are owed that. And like, those people don't owe us anything, like they don't owe us to tell us that they are having a kid. And again, none of us know like what people have been through. And the other thing that's weird is, you get a lot and I've done this, like I've done all these things, not realizing until I was in that position. I still, even to this day and I'm too old anyway, but like to this day, I'd be like, don't you want to have more? And like, I can't, like, I could barely have, like people say that and they don't realize like sometimes that when you ask like people, do they want to have more or do they want to have kids? Like, it's tough, like,
I do. I've been trying for 3 years.
I got a lot of that. Or I got like, God, how do you not want to have babies with Matt? Like, he's so cute. Like, how do you, and I'm like, like all the time, like people think it's like,
you're like, there are a lot of things wrong with that, but I'm just going to move past it.
But they're like, I had people like say that all the time and they're like, oh, you guys should have babies. And you're sitting there and I'm like, yeah, I had a miscarriage yesterday. So cool. Like, but they're not trying to make you feel bad. And I realize that, but it's just it's made me like realize like, I don't ask people if they want to have kids. Like I just don't even ask people that. Obviously if it's like your friends that but I don't ever say to someone like, when are you guys going to have kids or do you want to have kids? Because you just don't know. Like they might really want to have kids, but they don't want to get into that conversation of like they're struggling. Like it just changed. Obviously it changes like your perspective on that whole like world.
Yeah. You become more sensitive to it.
Yeah.
More understanding. Yeah.
Just, I think my last question would be, you talked a lot about how you were at your lowest low. One of the quotes you said in the health.com article, you said, I just really didn't want to have to tell the whole world that I lost the babies and losing babies was all I've ever known.
Yeah.
How did you pull yourself out of that? Was it Matt? Was it a therapist? Like what, because you said you weren't the most hopeful person. You weren't the most positive person. So like, what was it? Like, what did you find within yourself to get through?
I think this is going to sound so bad in some ways that, what got me through is that those 2 eggs worked. You know what I mean? And I why I say it sounds bad. I feel so bad about it because what if they didn't? And I don't know what that outcome looks like. I don't know. I've never been in my entire life more scared than I was to take the test to find out if it worked. Because knowing that there was nothing left, knowing that like doing more cycles was probably not going to help, I blew off the pregnancy test. So when you go through IVF, I can't remember now, but there's like a certain day after that you go in to do blood work to find out if it worked. And somebody tipped me off. I don't know why this genius idea didn't occur to me. They're like, wait, why would you wait and let them tell you? Like, go get a pregnancy test. And I'm like, genius. Like, again.
You're like, oh my God, I pee every day.
Oh my God. They sell these at the drugstore. What are you talking about? And so, but I just wasn't thinking. So there's an appointment. So, and my thought also was, so let's say I can't remember what it was. Let's say you have IVF. Let's just say it's 7 days later and it's somewhere in that range. It might be 10. Don't quote me on any of that. But, if I'm pregnant, hopefully I would be pregnant on like day 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, you know what I mean? Cause you want it to continue. So if I take that test, if I go in and take that blood work test and it doesn't work, like hope is gone. Like it's gone. And that's what I talk about. Like there was just always suspended somewhere out there, either be it in a IVF freezer or in the transfer process, there was like 2 little seeds of like hope. And if I went and took that pregnancy test and I'm not pregnant, like there is no more hope. So I didn't show up. Like I didn't show up to the pregnancy test. And then the doctor's office called and they're like, you didn't show up today. Just didn't answer it. I don't show up the next day. Like Matt's on the other side of the country. He's like, you gotta go like find out, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't want to find out. Like, I don't want to find out. I don't want to take it. And then my girlfriend who tipped me off to the, crazy news that Walgreens sells pregnancy tests. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it alone because I don't want to go do this in the office. Like, I don't want to, whatever. And so, if you've ever peed on a stick, it's like the 60-second delay. Like, it takes 2 seconds for that little like line to show up or whatever. whatever that amount of time is. Let's say it's 60 seconds. Well, that's like the longest 60 seconds. And I just remember feeling like I was having a heart attack. So I go pee on the stick, I put the stick down. And then again, I can't look at it. Like I couldn't even look at it because I'm like, and I just remember like walking around the house and feeling like I was going to have a panic attack. Like I couldn't breathe because like that was it. And then I'm going to have to call someone who's like warming up for their game. That's in like California at some point, like he was on the West Coast that year. And, I'm gonna have to call him and be like, it didn't work, or like, it just didn't like, and I will say when you said like hope, like all the times I didn't have hope, whether he believed it or not, he did. But he's going through it in a different way than I am. And somebody had to be positive and it was him, but he's also not there like on a regular basis or on a basis at all. Wasn't there when I transferred the eggs, wasn't there wasn't there. And that was just the reality of our situation. And the scariest thing I've ever done in my life, like more so than like delivery day, any of it, was like waiting to see the results on that stick. And I even knew that like, that still didn't mean I had a baby. Like for the entire duration of that thing didn't mean I had a baby, but it was just the idea of hope being evaporated. And so the long-winded way of answering that question is like, what pulled me out of it was that it worked. And there's a scenario that it could not have worked. And I don't know like what that outcome would have been. And I feel like brokenhearted for anybody that's dealing with that situation. That's me. And they go and pick that up and it's not that, you know? Because
what did you feel when you picked up the test? Like how long did it take you to walk back over and pick up the test?
Yeah. How many did you take?
3 hours. No, I only had one, like 3 hours. No, it wasn't 3 hours. It felt like it. It was like one of those things like, you know, if you've ever been on TV and something goes wrong, like I had a situation, recently that, somebody needed this graphic to pop up. They really needed this graphic to pop up and it didn't pop up and it wasn't me. Like I tossed to them, this analyst, and we're like, where's the graphic? Where's the graphic? Because it was really, really, really difficult names. I want to say it was like an Uzbekistan, like soccer lineup. Anyway.
Yeah.
And you know, that moment where it feels like it on air, it was probably like 20 seconds.
But it
might
was
not
an
even have been that. And I'm like, oh my God, it's 3 minutes.
Your whole body is hot. You're sweating,
I'm
like where you don't think you can sweat.
The guy next to me is like in trouble. Like he needs this lineup to get up. And I don't know how to help him because like, I don't know. Like it was that moment. And so where what you think is time, like time is work. But I did not sit there with it and look at it because I couldn't. Like I put it down, I walked away, and then I was like really having like breathing problems. And by the way, been on like television, done all sorts of things, like been in awkward situations, you name it. Like I've never had like my heart like hammering like those.
Yeah, like you could feel it. Yeah,
that was literally it. And again, if we knew that there were other eggs, if we knew that there were other options, if we knew that there were like here was going to be the backup plan, like that was truly like it for us, end of the line. Right. And like pick it up, like the sense of relief was just like, oh, I just lost an eyelash.
Listen, this is what happens. This is what happens.
Like when you I literally, well, there you go. I lost an eyelash on your show.
You still look radiant.
Clip it. That's a promo.
Oh my God.
You know, just a real professional here, guys. How do I carry on with the story? Oh, so yeah, that's literally, in fairness, like that's what got me through it, is that we all of a sudden had hope like left, and we like fought for that to happen and didn't give up. But I don't know, the reality is like I'm very understanding of, it's easy for me to be like, I got through it, because at the end of the day I have 2 kids, and it's very scary to think about that it could have not gone that way. And statistically, if I had looked at what the statistics say on you only have 2 eggs and there's people that do transfer after transfer after transfer. And so I have always looked at my situation as, even in the worst of times, like very fortunate, because there's kind of just no other way you can look at that stuff that way.
I love that.
You're amazing.
Beautiful note to close on. I can't thank you enough for being here and for sharing your story. There were so many things that you were saying that I'm like, that is going to resonate. That is going to resonate. Somebody is going to hang on to that quote. So that's really going to help somebody. So it's a really powerful story. And I'm just happy that your story did end the way that it did. And you have those 2 beautiful children. I also would be remiss if I did not ask somebody from the NFL Network these 2 questions before we leave. One being, who's winning the Super Bowl this year?
Oh, I don't.
Just say the Eagles, Sarah. Just spare
I know.
yourself. Just say the Eagles.
Oh, okay. They're really good. I will say this because I just saw them on Monday Night Football here, and I deal with the Bucks a lot, and I think the Bucks.
Oh, were you at that? Were you at that game?
Yeah.
Oh, I was there too.
Oh, you here in Tampa? Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And I would have said hi to you in person if I knew that.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know.
It made me realize this, like the Bucks are a good team. They got beat by a team that's just better. Like the Eagles are really, really good. But if I'm being quite honest, what popped in my head when you asked me that question,
I know what you're going to say.
I would say that what I'm going to say?
She's going to say the Chiefs.
No, I was going to say the Niners.
Oh, good for them. Good for the Niners. You know what? I think they're ready for one. Yeah.
That's just like, it's just in the back of my head. Like that's what popped in my head.
Yeah.
But speaking of the Chiefs, my second question was, are Taylor and Travis going to make it?
To the end of football season? To the end of the week? Where are we at?
Where are they going to make it to?
You know what? I don't think that, like, who am I? Again, this is where, like, I feel so stupid. I don't know what Travis and Taylor are really doing. I don't think from the reports, which I do actually follow a lot of,
here we go. This is some tea.
No, it's not tea. It's not anything from except that the magazines, like the like articles that I read when I'm not doing my job, which is actually a lot. No, I don't think they've really hung out all that much. So I think everyone thinks that this is a full blown relationship. And by the way, maybe they totally like each other.
I think they're having fun.
I think they're having fun. I think she's in like a she's like in between where she has to be out on tour. I think she's having a great time. Like,
well, this is what I said too. Like she's always dated these like artists who are like emotional and feely, and like maybe she just wants to, date like the hot football player.
Yeah.
Like she's just like, I want the caveman.
To your point on that, I'm always like, think about like these dudes that are like really artsy and
smaller than her.
Yeah. And she's tall and like, she's so tall and statuesque. Like she must love how like, he's like a huge dude. Like, by the way, I love that. Like last week,
same.
like here's an example. I did on the field when the game ended. I was at Ravens last week. Mark Andrews is this massive tight end. Like he's one of these people that up in the press box, you can look down, you're like, that guy's way bigger than everyone. He's just huge. And I remember saying to my producer, I'm like, because I'm not a tiny person. And I'm like, I'm gonna look so tiny. Like,
okay, no. You are a tiny person. You're just tall.
No.
You are a very tiny person. Yes.
I'm not like tiny bone. But regardless, I love whenever I did stuff with Gronk, I would look so small because he's a huge person. And so I thought the same thing. I'm like, she must be like, he's gigantic. And I like feeling like a lot smaller. Some people like, one of my girlfriends like loves short guy. Like that's her thing. And like, but
short kings, baby.
But Taylor's been with all these like artsy people that it's like a real, I think it's like fun for anyone in life to go do something different. And she hasn't really been in that venue, but also she looks like she's having a great time.
She's going to games. She's banging on the glass. Like this is different.
Let the girl have fun. She's living a real life for a little bit. Let the girl have fun. But what I also think is funny, I think this episode is slated to air October 23rd, and it will be really fun to see if this is even still a thing by the time this episode
you're gonna have to you might have to cut out the last time, but we won't know. Like we won't know. We don't know what they're doing. And now what's so weird is that look, she went to his game. I think he extended an invite to a game, and I think she's like in that moment of time she's like, yeah, I'll go.
Her yes
she just went to like the Jets game with like Ryan or what's his face, Blake Lively and her husband
Ryan, like Hugh Jackman,
it's fun.
Sophie Turner, like all of them. Okay, but here's the thing: that game was in New York. They weren't all like schlepping to like Green Bay.
No,
you know what I mean? It just lined up. I think that he had this game in Kansas City. She goes to it, and then by the way, hey, next week I'm going to be in New York. Like
easy done. Like we all have houses there.
Like I don't know if like she's gonna. The funny thing is like if she doesn't go to a game, if she's not at the game next week, people are going to be like, oh, they're not together.
They're broken up.
Well, they've also won each game that she's been at. So two things. One, an Eagles player came out and was like, you're uninvited to the game at Kansas City because you're making them win. But also, if they lose, immediately everyone's going to be like, oh, it's because
if Travis was like
he's
dropping the ball.
Distracted.
Yeah. I already thought if he has a bad game, people are going to lose their mind and be like, it's because of this. But that whole theory. So here's what I don't buy for a second. That whole theory of like, we don't want her there because they're winning. They're the Kansas City Chiefs. They win everything. Like I hate to like break it to like the Swifties. Like the Chiefs were going to beat like, they're the Chiefs. They have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and they're a really good football team that wins Super Bowls. So like this idea that they're winning, like No,
which
they're gonna
I
win.
love as a Philly girl. Like I love this for Andy Reid. Like I really do love this for Andy
everyone
Reid.
loves Andy Reid. But by the way, Jason Kelsey on the Eagles, he's having a great time. You know what? So that Monday game,
Their podcast is killing it as well.
I know.
Oh, their podcast is killing it.
Yeah.
But after that Monday night game in Tampa, Taylor, that's when she went to the first game in Kansas City.
Mhm.
And so then Jason Kelsey is talking Monday night. And like our producer's like, you need to ask him about it. And like, I'm not asking him about it. Like he's not dating her. And like, I'm not asking, he just won a game that like, I refuse. I was like, no.
Yeah,
no,
that's
no.
that's good feel on your part. That's you
But I'm
being
like, no, it's not appropriate in the setting. Like if you're in a setting where like, but he just won a game that 13, like it doesn't have anything to do with him. That being said, if that question had been asked, I know the only soundbite that would have been run.
Oh
like,
yeah,
correct.
Only soundbite that would have been run. But you know what? Like I just was like, I'm not doing it. Like I'm not.
What about like the Taylor Swift song or songs or album that's going to come out of this? Like think of Kenny Chesney, Boys of Fall. Like what are we going to get out of Taylor Swift as like the next football anthem?
But what if it's not? So everyone's like so geared up for that. I truly think if they just started hanging out, unless this has been going on for months and months and months, which I don't think it was because she had other boyfriends. If they just started during football season, like there's just no way. She's in the middle of a massive tour and he's in the middle of football season in Kansas City. So like, I just don't think that they've probably hung out.
Are they?
I don't know.
Are they
past her?
Are they
Listen,
Posh Spice and David Beckham of the new generation?
One of her best songs, Enchanted, was about somebody she locked eyes with across a room and never even spoke to. So they don't need to hang out much for her to get.
Are you a
bangers out
Swiftie
there.
that much that you know like the lyrical origins?
Me?
Yes.
Only on some of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that one.
Yeah.
I do have a Chiefs game in Germany. Like I'm going to Germany in I don't even know what day of the week it is right now. But
Are you bringing the pack with you?
Squad.
No, the pack's got to be in school.
Okay.
There and that international trip's just it's too much. But so I'm like, I haven't looked yet, but I was like, oh, because she's going overseas for a tour, and so I need to see like if that lines up. Can you imagine if she shows up over in Germany? If she shows up in Germany, then it's not as casual as people think it is. If she shows up over there. Because then you're really doing some travel to get to these games. But even if she keeps showing up in Kansas City, I mean, that's not like Taylor Swift's not hanging out in Kansas City,
right?
Randomly,
right.
She's randomly in New York City, but
right.
So I don't know. We'll see. But I don't think that their wins. Unfortunately, I don't think that they're tied to Taylor. Taylor. I think they're just really good.
No, but the NFL is certainly loving it and cashing in on it.
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah, lots of female viewership for sure.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you shared today.
We love you.
Really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Are you guys cutting this off because you're like, she's got one eyelash, we gotta go, or one eye?
No, it's because I told you it was an hour and we're at like an hour 45 and I feel bad because you have like children and a life.
No, they're in school. The one positive about school is that it's like this whole chunk of the day. It is weird. Like the whole school thing's weird. It is a lot of work, but when they were like the first day that they were gone, and they're gone for a long time, like 7:45 to 3, I'm like, oh my God, every day? Like it's like a whole new world of getting things done.
I know.
So hence I can be on this podcast and they're not running in here asking for their 800th snack of the day. So but good to talk to you guys.
Yeah, you're the best. Thank you.
Yeah.